Getting the smile and confidence you've been dreaming about, all from the comfort of your home, isn't a total mystery with Bite clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all your friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system. If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served. Hi, I'm Detective Dave. I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood. So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished. From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
And each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Kevin Kopacka. He is a painter and a director, and his latest film, Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes, was a huge hit at Panic Fest and is now being released on VOD on the 24th of June. Kevin, hello. We are so excited that you are here with us all the way from Berlin today.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited as well.
Yeah, we're so excited that your movie, we'll get to it in a minute, but your movie was a genuine surprise for me at the fest, and I love it when a movie can just be one thing and then turn into something completely different. So, but before we do talk about that, let's take it back to the very, very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
For me, it kind of feels like I was like literally born with my love for horror, because when I was 3 years old, my family and I went on vacation, and there was this toy store, and they had this little like really gross looking skeleton with glowing red eyes, and I kind of became obsessed with that. So I kind of bugged my parents until they bought it for me, and ever since then I've kind of been like really, really obsessed with all things horror. And so, for instance, when I was 4 or 5, I started, in quote unquote, writing my first story, which was basically I was just dictating it to my dad, and he was writing it, and I was illustrating pages for it. So it was like 50 pages, and it was called The Murderer. So it was kind of about a little boy who chases. He wakes up one night and he sees that like there's been a knife in his door. Someone with a knife kind of cut through it, and he kind of goes investigating, and he finds this murderer, and he goes chase him through a castle and through the woods, and eventually there's kind of like a showdown, and he kills the murderer. And yeah,
oh wow,
so it was a kind of messed up story for a 4-year-old.
4 years old. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that.
I love that your dad was writing it was writing it as you dictated it, and he was like,
yeah.
Continue.
That's amazing.
It's okay, and then the murderer slices open. Yeah, okay, yeah. I was kind of, in retrospect, I'm really happy that my parents, didn't freak out because they kind of indulged me in my horror fables. So they always kept buying me new horror stuff. And I got really into, because I was too young to watch horror movies for a long time. So I was mainly like reading a lot of horror comics or like horror books. I had like these anthology short stories that I kind of used to read. And even before I watched my first horror movie, I already kind of knew about all the, the classic franchise horror characters and the Alien and Predator and stuff like that. So I've been, a horror film. I was a horror film for like 8 years before I even watched my first horror movie. Oh, not 8 years, but yeah.
So did you grow up in Berlin, or where did you end up growing up at?
I'm from Austria, so
okay.
originally grew up in Graz. Yeah, and my mom's from Sri Lanka, but they kind of met in Asia, and my dad was a hippie, and they got married three weeks after they met, and they moved to Austria, and yeah.
What was the horror scene like there? Like, did you have access to a lot of horror movies and horror stuff, or was it harder to get things? Because I know some places in Europe, especially, I don't know when you grew up, but it was a little bit more of a censorship type thing. So I was kind of curious how you got introduced to it.
I mean, in Austria itself, I think there was not really that boom for kids, for like horror stuff, but luckily I kind of had the opportunity. We got like British TV because my uncle was living in the UK, so we got like Fox Kids and Nickelodeon, and there was luckily in the early 90s there were a lot of really cool horror shows. There was like Tales from the Crypt Keeper, which was the cartoon version of Tales from the Crypt that I really liked, and of course, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Goosebumps. So I had a lot of Goosebumps books growing up, and so everything I could, like scary stories to read in the dark, like all the things for kids who were into horror.
Yeah.
I was into, but I was kind of the only one because in Germany or in Austria nobody knew of all this stuff. I just got it because when my dad went to the States, he brought me some stuff, and so it was kind of a bit of an outsider.
So then, what was the first horror movie you watched after you've like been reading all this stuff? What was the first movie you watched?
The first horror movie I watched was called Sometimes They Come Back.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys know it. It's like a Stephen King adaptation about also like a group of bullies from the 50s that come back to haunt this one guy. And I can't really remember much. I just know this one scene where they're hiding in the church and these ghosts, they're not able to go into the church, so they're kind of waiting outside for them. I think it's kind of a family-friendly horror film, so it was a good first time to watch it. Yeah.
But then, so what were some of your favorite horror movies when you started watching them? So what were some of the movies that you saw that you really loved as a kid? Or I guess, how old were you when you saw that first movie, I guess is the first question.
Probably like 9 years old, I think.
Okay.
And I think my first introduction to horror movies in general, I don't know if you guys remember in the early days of the internet, there was a site called houseofhorrors.com, and it had like a list of a very select few movies. I think it was like 10 or 12 movies where it had like photos and sound bites, and luckily these were like the small selection of films they had were films that I still love a lot. It was kind of like Evil Dead, Reanimator, Cemetery Man, Zombie as well, and Dawn of the Dead. So all of these classic non-franchise horror movies that I got really into. And so I kind of started saving up my pocket money, and every month I went to the store and I was able to buy one movie. And so I kind of went through the list and I got like Return of the Living Dead, a lot of zombie movies actually. One of them was of course Fulci's Zombie as well. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I think there was some like non-horror movies that I watched before, that like Terminator 2, that kind of freaked me out as well. But when it first came out, and there was like a big problem, unfortunately, in Germany or in Austria, that a lot of the movies were cut.
Yeah.
Because they were quite strict, so it was always kind of a gambit to go into the store, and I paid like a lot of money for a VHS or DVD, and then to find out that it was a cut version was quite frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because that was a huge thing. It still is to some degree, but like it was huge back in the late 80s, early 90s. There was a lot of things that were unfortunately cut. I remember everyone freaking out about Friday the 13th, one of those, I can't remember which numbered one, but they had just like hacked all of the gore out of it, and it's frustrating for fans, especially if you are a gore hound.
Yeah, and if you saved up all your pocket money and then you're like, oh.
And you watch it and it's like, oh, there's nothing in this. So I know you said you started writing around 4 years old about horror stuff, and you started watching horror movies. Were you a scared kid? Did horror movies and horror stuff scare you growing up?
I think up to a certain age, yes, but I've been suffering from sleep paralysis my whole life. So I don't know if you guys know about it. Where you kind of hallucinate and you see like really freaky stuff happening, and because I had that since an early age, I kind of had to train my body not to be frightened of these things. So as a result of that, I kind of, unfortunately, I don't really get scared as much anymore. And yeah, so it's kind of a shame because I kind of wish I were able to still get frightened as much. But yeah, because with the sleep paralysis, I saw some really messed up stuff, and I had to kind of train myself to just look at it and think, okay, it's not real.
I had always heard of sleep paralysis, but I'd never had it before until about 6 months. This last 6 months, I've had it twice, and boy,
okay, wow.
There's no horror movie as terrifying as being stuck and unable to move while you see things that should not be in your room. So I can I can actually empathize recently because it kind of fucked me up.
I've never experienced it, and I don't want to ever. Yeah. But so you say that you really don't get scared because of that, which makes sense. Is there a movie that you've seen recently that you think kind of almost scared you or kind of scratched that itch of getting under your skin?
Oh yeah. I think one movie, Caveat. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
Like there's this one scene,
in the cellar.
Yeah, when there's like suddenly the hole in the over the corpse, and so that was really quite freaky. I was like, okay, wow, this is quite intense. So this really got me. Yeah, this is definitely one, and the other one, it's like the sadness. You had Rob as a guest I saw, and this one it freaked me out in a different sense. It was just very visceral, and it just kind of
upsetting.
It was very upsetting. It's good, the good word, and I think it was because I saw it at Fright Fest when which was like pretty much a year ago, and I just watched it again now that it came out on Shudder, and even though I had seen it before, I still felt very uneasy watching it again, and this rarely happened to me, so I was like, okay, this is quite effective.
That's a good one. Yeah, that movie was I've seen it like 2 or 3 times now, and it's like every time I'm watching it, I just get that pit in my stomach.
What is wrong with us?
We got to introduce your friends to it,
I know.
It's like you want to see something really fucked up? Let's watch this movie.
Because also with the sadness, I was really upset about the implications, because I was thinking, okay, if this happens in real life, then okay, I would need to go back to Austria to protect my mom, and then I was like, okay, but what if I come to my mom and then I'm infected, then it's even worse, if I do something to her. So I was like, okay, what should I do? Or just like the thought of all the children and their parents suddenly get infected, like all the stuff you luckily don't see in the movie, but just the implications of it really stuck with me for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So what draws you to the genre now as an adult?
I don't. It's hard to say, because as I said, I used to be so obsessed with horror, and then as I grew a bit older, I kind of tried to, shy away from it.
Okay.
I moved to Berlin and I studied fine arts, and in the back of my head, I always had this thing. I used to love horror, but now it's not artistic, or I don't know, whatever. And at some point, I was like, it's just the thing that still gives me the most pleasure in life in general, just the horror genre. So I was like, okay, I kind of got out of this brainwashing you get from studying art, I guess, where you say like, okay, this is art and this is not art and stuff like that. And I just kind of fully embraced it again, like 10 years ago, I guess. And I think one thing I always really like is just, I'm always drawn to atmosphere, to things that kind of elicit a certain atmosphere. And I think the horror genre has, maybe the sci-fi genre as well, but the horror genre just has like the most interesting atmosphere in films, because it's just very different directions, and it's I just like this feeling of dread and doom, but also sometimes beauty and like all these different atmospheres that can be evoked in the horror genre. Just the idea that that you have just this very simple premise of a horror film. It's something that elicits fear out of you, and there's just so many different ways you can do it, and it's just so many different. I don't know. It's just a very broad genre, and has like from splatter to I don't know, art house to creature features. You just have like all these different subgenres, and it's just a very very versatile genre.
Speaking of subgenres, what do you find yourself like gravitating towards now as an adult, in terms of like, do you like splatter movies? Do you like creature features? Do you like more psychological? What kind of pulls you in?
I generally feel like my definition of horror is like the horror films I like are usually, they are like supernatural in a sense, like not ghostly, but just like demons and monsters and stuff. That I kind of prefer those over just classical, realistic horror films that are kind of where there's like a killer or like a thriller things. I really like demon movies in general, like just like Night of the Demons and stuff like that. There aren't too many new ones, unfortunately. And generally, I love gore, so I love also, of course, I love like splatter and visceral horror films. But I'm kind of mixed on the these new these slow burn trauma-related horror films. There's some I really like, but some that I just kind of I think they're good movies, but I personally wouldn't say I like them because they're maybe not for me as much. But then there's some others that I just really enjoy. Yeah.
I think trauma movies are kind of becoming almost a trope. Like I'm a huge fan of them, but like there's so many of them now that they keep turning out, and I don't think they're saying anything new.
It's oversaturated now, and like as a girl who loves to watch movies about trauma, like you said, It's like okay, like. It's terrible because it's like I'm so glad that people can use like hopefully here's the other thing too, like are you using it to process trauma or are you using it to like capitalize off of the fact that people want to watch movies about trauma, which always is a slippery slope for me too. But again, like that's a hard question to be like, so are you a traumatized person or not? Like,
right.
Anyway,
right.
But so Kevin, like, what would you say some of your favorite movies that you've seen in the past like 5 years have been, or like a couple of your favorites?
I have to open my list because I have a letterboxed list. I can't keep track of too many, but the Innocents I really liked.
Oh, The Innocents was so good. I really liked that movie. I was surprised. It's cool. So dark.
Yeah, it was quite intense. Also, I like the ending. It's kind of it goes with a whimper, not a bang. It's just like really slow ending. I have to check. I think most of them you've probably all seen. There's like not a lot of hidden gems, but we're all going to the World's Fair. I really liked a lot. Even though when I was watching it, I didn't like it as much, but I just kind of kept thinking about it. And in retrospect, I really liked it a lot. Hellbender, I liked a lot. Titan was great.
Of course.
Then Two Witches. Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
Two Witches?
I think
no.
Two Witches. It was shown at the Salem Horror Fest, and I kind of was writing with Pierre, with the director, and so we kind of sent each other the screeners. And I think it's coming out now via Arrow.
Oh.
It's a really cool film. I think it's a good mixture of, and it's actually a very scary horror film, but it's in some way I think it's also quite funny because I think it's of course intentionally funny, but it's a great mixture that it's very scary and fun at the same time.
I've somehow missed this one.
It didn't have a long festival run. It was at Sitges, but and at Salem, and I'm not sure a few others.
Oh, I saw his short film, I Who Have No One. I've seen that short film, but I didn't see Two Witches. Oh
yeah.
I'm gonna have to keep this on my radar.
Yes, me too. That poster is incredible.
Then My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, I liked.
That's such a sad movie.
Yeah, I'm just going through. The Empty Man was pretty interesting. History of the Occult, have you seen that one? It's like a South American horror movie.
No.
I think it was, but I'm not sure where. It's like Christian Ponce is the director, and it has like a really high rating, so I was kind of interested to check it out, and then I was in touch with the director, and we also kind of exchanged screeners. And this one is quite interesting because it reminded me a bit of maybe Pontypool in a sense.
Okay.
What's it called?
History of the Occult.
Oh.
This looks really good. Okay. I have movies to add to my list now.
Like, yay.
So I was kind of lucky like last year because of I was myself touring at festivals, so I was really I had a lot of films on my radar that came out the last 2 years. So.
Okay, so speaking of being on the festival for your movie, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your new film and what it's about?
It's you could say it's a gothic horror movie set in the 70s that tells the story of a relationship in a multi-layered kind of like a multi-layered way. If that makes sense. I know it's, as you've seen it, it's kind of hard to kind of explain it. But yeah, it's just a big love letter to the Euro horror films of the 60s and 70s, and especially Gothic horror films.
I just have to tell you before we talk about it, Terry told me to watch this movie. I came home from a concert. I was not maybe totally sober, and I was so excited to watch it at like 1 a.m, and I was like live texting Terry my reactions as the movie progressed, of me just like my face slowly like getting bigger and bigger and excited with like all the different things that happen in this movie. It's just, oh, what a good time. What a good movie.
Oh, thank you so much.
But yeah, as you said, it is really difficult to talk about because the film does sort of like folds in on itself, tells a different story, kind of changes direction a bit in some places. What were some of your inspirations though for making this film, the setting and the way it was filmed? Like it feels like, as you said, it's pulling from a lot of Euro horrors. Were there any movies in particular that was informing this one?
I think the initial inspiration was The Iron Rose from Jean Rollin.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it. It's about the couple who are kind of trapped in a graveyard the whole night, and it's not really a supernatural film. It's very atmospheric, but it's kind of about the constantly shifting dynamic between this couple. And so this was kind of the initial idea. I just wanted to do a film about a couple who spend eternity in a castle, and just to kind of see how their relationship changes and if they're kind of stuck with each other for eternity. And out of that, this whole story kind of blossomed, and it became something really different in the process. And so this was one movie. Then, of course, I have to think, The Whip and the Body from Mario Bava, which I quite liked as well. And Daughters of Darkness, of course. This one I quite liked. Then some Fassbinder movies, some German movies, because I was thinking, okay, it's if I'm making a film in German, it's always, I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with making German films or German films in general. So I was thinking, okay, if I do it in German, it has to at least also be inspired by the German films from the time. And I've never been into Fassbinder as much, but then I kind of started watching a lot for this film, and I thought they were actually quite funny, because I always thought they would be just these very depressing, kitchen sink dramas, but they had some really strange and absurd, surreal moments in them, which I quite liked, and so this was an inspiration. And of course, like from La Race, the vampires. This one I like. I know it's just like a whole bunch, and but also from the second part, there's actually some you might not guess. Like I was really inspired by Hair, by the musical Hair from Milos Forman.
Okay, I can see that.
It's just
I can actually see
just
that.
This kind of over the top, over the top hippie thing. And Psych Out, which also, like a hippie movie from back then. And I think Society,
okay.
of course,
I was going to ask, because like, we're not going to get into spoilers, but there is a sequence in here that it's not the shunting that happens in Society, but it brought to mind, shall I say, that movie, and I immediately wrote my note: is this Society happening on my screen right now? So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh yeah, I love Society, and I was actually surprised that people kind of caught the reference, because initially I wanted to do it with a lot more special effects, and I had kind of contacted the special effects guy, and he was like, okay, for 10,000 euros we can do it, and I was like, okay, no, I'm sorry, I won't be able to afford it, but somehow we still managed to at least.
It's very evocative of that movie, like
very much is.
Instantly in my head that's kind of what you're going for, and I think that's what I love about this film is when you first start watching it, you think it's one thing, and it's kind of this. I'm going to say almost a slow burn between these two people exploring this house, and then it turns into something more, and there's moments of graphic violence, and then it turns into something else, and then I'm just like, I love when a movie can do that. And I'm also like, what I actually really loved about it was that there are these moments that reminded me, okay, this feels like kind of like an Italian shot film with like some of the color patterns and the way the camera moves. And this feels very Society, but it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it feels like it's doing something, it's elevating it. It's more, it's taking that and not just recreating it, but doing something different with it. And that is what really, I think, impressed me about your film.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Yeah, it's also very interesting to see the reactions people give, because it's of course very mixed. You know, some people, they just like really hate the movie, especially because they really like the first half, and then they just hated it that it kind of goes into something different. And other people are like, okay, they didn't like the first half, but then as soon as it kind of changes, they liked it a lot. So of course you can't always please everyone, but yeah, I'm really happy that you enjoyed it, because that's kind of my intention. Was it's a film that's very aware that it's being watched by an audience, so it kind of plays with the expectations a lot. And I think usually when you watch a film, after sort of a certain point, you kind of can grasp in which range this film is. You know, is it violent? Is it is it this and that? And if you kind of take that away from the audience, then I think then you kind of have to be aware that anything can happen, and that might evoke a sort of fear as well, even though I don't think it's a scary movie, but yeah, well, just disorienting.
I also love the idea of like voyeurism in it, because you have the ghosts, the two ghosts that have been living in this castle, right? And then you also have like the two main leads that come to the castle because she's inherited it, and so you have like them watching them, but then there's also something else that's being watched at the time, and it sort of is all about that kind of voyeuristic focus of these different characters through different lenses. And I don't know, I just love it when movies do that, get a little meta in that regard, but not necessarily like calling out that it's meta, just sort of like playing with that it's just another level that you can appreciate in a film. And I loved it.
Oh, cool.
How did you find the house? The castle. Yeah.
Castle, I've known about this for many years because of my former flatmate. She was, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say what the castle was used to, what it was supposed to be used for, because it was used for like fetish parties, and so that's how I kind of found out about it. Which it's not used for now. Now it's mainly for weddings and special events where you can rent it. But yeah, that's how I initially found out about it.
Rent your castle for rent the castle for your next shunting. That's.
I love that.
So we just kind of went to visit the castle, because I just really wanted to do a film where it's set in one location, just that you don't always have to travel to different places. And so, yeah, actually the castle, I saw the castle and I already had some of the concept for the script in mind, but once I was there, it was okay. I kind of knew the basic structure of the place, so I could kind of write the script around it. And like all the animals, they're actually living in the castle or near the castle, so this was quite amazing.
Wow!
Like the peacocks and the white rabbits and pigs and like all cats, and they were already there, so we didn't have to bring them.
Sounds like through the rabbit, like down the rabbit hole, like a magical, weird place in a good way.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, it's almost like a cliche at this point, but the house really is a character in this movie. Like, and that's what I wanted. Like Mary Beth, I wanted to know more about this. I was like, where is this place? This place it's gorgeous. It's haunting. It's gothic. It's there's something kind of sexual about it. So I'm not surprised to hear the history, but like that's so great.
But I'm not sure if after our shoot, if they are going to let anyone else shoot in the house, because they came by at the second day when we shot the. Okay, I know I can't spoil like one scene with a lot of people involved in like a sexual nature. Very euphemizing, but and then they were quite shocked afterwards, so we had to clean everything up after, and we didn't get the stains out and stuff like that. So they kind of took all the advance payment.
No.
They kind of, but in the end, I think they were quite happy because we were able to leave the castle in a nice state. Like we didn't burn down the castle or anything.
Couldn't get the stains out.
Oh man, I cannot wait for people to watch this movie.
It's so hard to talk about, but you're like, just watch it. Just watch the movie. It's incredible. But Kevin, we've talked about your horror history, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
I brought Zombi by Lucio Fulci from 1979 or 8? Yeah.
Yep, yeah. 1979.
This really definitely traumatized me a lot.
Ooh, so excited. So before we jump into that, I'll read a quick synopsis and then we will jump into your Scarred for Life story. But Zombi, strangers searching for a young woman's missing father arrive at a tropical island where a doctor desperately seeks the cause and cure for a recent epidemic of the undead. Dun, dun, dun. All right, Kevin, why is this your Scarred for Life pick? Tell us your Scarred for Life story with Zombie. How old were you?
So I think,
Where did you see it? Everything.
So this film, it traumatized me even before I saw it, because as I mentioned, this on this House of Horror site, they showed this poster for the US release, which you all know, with the tagline "We're going to eat you," and you see this really rotting zombie. So this freaked me out just before having seen the movie at all. So I was just like, okay, I can't watch this movie. And at some point, I still bought it and I watched it by myself, and it was like a cut version, unfortunately. So like some of the scenes, like the eye gouge scene, was a bit cut.
Okay.
But I was just like really totally freaked out by the film, and especially because I'd seen, I think, 1 or 2 zombie movies before, like Return of the Living Dead I've seen, and maybe the Dawn of the Dead, I'm not sure. But I thought the zombies in this film were just like really different, and they have their eyes closed, and I don't know, they just seemed really dead. And it's compared, also the makeup is of course great. It's not just like blue paint or what some films used back then. And I remember like there's just one moment that kind of stuck with me is when of course there's a lot of iconic moments, but this was just like really small, subtle moment in when they kind of go to the house of the wife of the doctor who gets her eye gouged out. And they just see her lying there and she's being eaten by zombies. And there's like this one moment where the zombie is just kind of taking flesh, and it's hard to describe, but he's taking it close to his mouth, but it seems like his mouth and his head, they're not the same thing. They're not thinking the same way. So it's not his head going to the flesh, but it's like his hand, like really slowly going there. And then he just acknowledges it. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but for some reason that felt really realistic, that they're like really dead and they're not functioning, but they still have these urges, these tribal urges to feed. And so that, messed me up quite a lot.
I mean, that scene is really, it's surprisingly shot. And I've seen this movie maybe 4 or 5 times. And when you get to that scene and, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit in like hindsight, because they walk around the corner, they're looking around the room. The first thing that you would think they would see is the body and the corpses around it, but no one seems to notice it until when the woman goes and points, and the camera focuses first on the body, and so it's like, oh, okay, there's a dead body here. Her hand is like draped over the side. It's partially eaten, devoured, and it's gory. And they're like, ooh, that's kind of nasty. And then all of a sudden you realize that there's not 1, not 2, but 4 zombies that are just gnawing on this body that they apparently didn't see when they first walked in. And I mean, that's some of the joy, I think, in some of these early Italian cinema, like horror cinema things, is that kind of almost silliness to it, where like they want to like maximize the scare. And so I love that sequence, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because there's the zombie, and I think it's like almost it looks like a liver. There's like a piece of meat that he's like, and he doesn't quite know what to do with it. It seems like, or maybe the actor doesn't want to eat the thing. I don't know, but it works. It's haunting.
No, it's just, and it's a shocking moment too, because I feel like, so this is my first time seeing this movie. Provoke my horror cred here, but my first time seeing this movie, and like I like Fulci a lot, so I knew it was going to be nasty. I knew it was going to be gross. But that scene is like, we don't even get like those scenes this nasty in like modern zombie stuff. I feel like most modern zombie stuff, like this is just like a horrible, gross kind of not quiet moment, but like, she's just lying there and you're watching her get eaten. And there's something so fucking sad about that and grotesque. And Fulci just lets you kind of marinate. I know necessarily, but like pun intended, marinate and like with what you're watching. And I think something that happens a lot, I think, in contemporary horror is moving so quickly with, even if the zombies are slow, like quick edits and like moving through the action really quickly. And I think what this movie does so well is like slowing down to really make you look at the horror of what is happening in front of you, and like, holy shit. And like, it's like you are with them. Like, we talked about voyeurism in your film, Kevin, but like you are so aware that you are watching somebody's body get eaten by these zombies, and it's just like, oh my God. And like, it's really impressive to see how Fulci was capturing this in the late 70s. And like, now I fully understand why people were like, this was a real, like, people were like pissed off by this movie, because in the 70s I cannot even like imagine people saying that and being like, Yay! Applause! It's just so impressive. We're seeing impressive.
Yeah, and especially.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and when you see this scene, you're kind of, as you said, you envision yourself being in this moment, and you would not look at this scene that long. You would just like bolt out of the house. But since it's there, it kind of grows this tension, and then they move back, and there's two other zombies standing there, so it becomes really claustrophobic. And quite intense.
Yeah, and that's one thing I do like about kind of going with what you said, Mary Beth, and the kind of claustrophobic nature of it. The movie focuses on these zombies, and they're very slow. Like, these zombies are very slow, and when they're very methodical when they're rising from the graves and everything. It's everything feels almost like. If you were to watch this and then watch like a modern day film, you would think this movie was shot in slow motion, because everything is they're very methodical in the way they sit up, the way they're lurching down the hallway. And on part of it, it's like, okay, you could outrun these dudes very easily, you think. But then you also have moments where, as you said, Kevin, they turn around a corner and there's two zombies there, and they're now stuck in this very, the camera's top down almost, and you just, it makes them feel like they're just stuck in like a little hallway that they're not going to be able to escape from. And I don't know, I love that the movie can make things that are very slow and very deliberate in their execution feel still kind of dangerous and scary.
Well, and there's the moment where they get to the hospital towards the end, and like the zombies are very slowly ambling behind them, and I was giggling a little bit. I'm like, it's almost kind of funny, but then when they get in there, and it's like, yeah, they're slow, but once they get to you, like, you're trapped. You are trapped, and like that kind of. I feel like, and again, like, there has been a bunch of like the contemporaries, like the sadness, like zombies are really fast now, which I like. But this movie was a good reminder that slow zombies can be just as scary, especially if you're in a confined space, not just like in a hospital, but they're on an island too. So like, even though they're on an island, like there's open space, there's only so far they can go. And so that claustrophobia just amped up. And again, like, I want to giggle at the slows, like when they look behind them and they're just like a little in the background, kind of ambling, and you're like, oh, they'll be fine, and then they are not fine. But they're sneaky. Like, I feel like these are sneaky zombies, because again, this happens a couple times where it's like, oh, they're fine, and then like 4 more appear in the back room, just like, surprise, we're here, and it's just like, so like It's like parts of this, I was like, it's so silly, but it's actually pretty effectively scary for what this is. So,
yeah, and they're underwater. They're coming from out the ground, so you can't really. They're kind of everywhere.
Oh, the water,
and in New York as well.
Yeah, and in New York as well. All of a sudden, up on the very, I love the last shot. I mean, we're kind of skipping to the end, but I love the last shot of the movie of them just on top of the bridge, just aimlessly trudging towards New York. But Mm-hmm. Okay, you mentioned the water scene, and this is the one, like, when you think about Zombie, there are iconic scenes that sticks out to mind for you. One of them is, of course, Paola getting impaled, which I want to talk about, and then there's the zombie versus shark. And was that in the original cut that you saw?
Oh yeah, this was in the original, and the eye gouges was as well, but you didn't see the puncturing as well. But the zombie versus shark scene is, I think, still one of the most impressive directed scenes I've ever seen, because it's just so much you have to kind of take into account, and it's before CGI. So you have like a real shark that they just kind of fed and sedated, and I think the shark trainer ended up becoming the zombie, which is probably the smartest choice. But even just then the shark bites off his arm, and it's kind of green blood, and then he actually bites the shark. So it's just like a lot happening. And I have no idea how long it must have taken, or how lucky they were to get all these great shots.
That was, I mean, holy shit.
And it's not just any shark. It's a tiger shark.
It's a tiger shark.
Everyone talks about a great white shark, and yeah, a great white shark is a great white shark. But like, tiger sharks are very vicious. And so
tiger sharks are the tigers of the ocean.
Yeah. And so even though the shark is well fed and he's sedated, which, boy, I don't think that would happen today.
You think, Terry? You think?
I don't think this scene could be filmed today as it was, because that man, I actually, as I remember watching this. Okay, I remember watching this probably, it was either the late 90s or early 2000s when I first saw it, and I think it was a VHS copy. That's what my memory has, but I can't honestly remember. And I remember seeing this movie. I remember seeing this movie in like Blockbuster and Hollywood Video with the cover, and the cover that you were talking about, Kevin, where it's like they're going to eat you, and it's the gnarly zombie, another iconic moment that I want to talk about with the worms coming out of his one eye. And I remember seeing this going, this is unlike any zombie movie I've ever seen. Like, that zombie is unlike the Night of the Living Dead zombies that I've seen, or the Return of the Living Dead, or anything that I had seen up until that point, and I had always wanted to see it. I didn't know what it was called. I just remember that cover. And then I remember reading, I don't remember if it was in Fangoria or some horror magazine back in like the 90s, and they were talking about some zombie movies that no one has seen that are terrifying, and this one was on it. And I remember that's why I'm pretty sure it was a VHS. It might have been the DVD release in the early 2000s, but I'm pretty sure it was a VHS because I remember it being very grainy and being very a really bad copy that I ended up seeing. And this movie, when I first saw it, made me feel very like skeezed out, like it, because of the way it was looking, the graininess of the footage, and you can't quite see what's happening. It sort of, the eye piercing scene, it made it feel more real because it kind of covered up that some of the more effects that I think now, like the last time I watched this was on a restoration. I watched this last night on a 4K restoration, and everything is pristine and beautiful, but I think it kind of takes away some of that, I don't know, gritty sleaziness of this film. But I remember watching this movie and getting to the shark scene and being like, oh my God, I cannot believe they're doing this, and being like amazed about it. Now watching it, I feel so bad for that shark, because that shark is being manhandled. His fins are being held. The guy is literally wrestling the shark. As an adult, I was like, oh gosh, this makes me feel uncomfortable because I feel bad for that shark.
I know. I needed to do more research because, like, I was like, wait, hold on. They really are wrestling a whole ass shark. This isn't a Jaws. This isn't some like animatronic. No, like, this is a whole ass shark that is just trying to mind its own business. And this guy is just like my favorite is when the naked scuba diver is like, it's coming for me. And the shark is so obviously unbothered. Just like swimming around, just like doing its thing.
High as a kite.
High as a kite, just like bopping around the reef. And she's like, it's gonna get me. And it's just like, I don't give a shit. It's incredible. But as much as I'm like, wow, they really just took her top off for it's a 70s movie, incredibly, like, when she takes off her top and she's got sunburnt boobs and like a tiny little loincloth and she puts on the scuba gear, I'm like, honestly, iconic though, because she knows how to put on scuba gear, underwater photographer. She doesn't fuck around. Good for her. That sequence though is so like the score is absolutely incredible. Like and it's so jarring when like she comes up out of the water and it cuts off. Like there is no like seamless transition. It just cuts off. And it's like this underwater, creepy, weird, ethereal feeling. And it's just like the score is just for this movie is incredible, especially in that moment, the underwater sequence, going from her running from the shark to the zombie fighting the shark. It's just an incredible sequence of events that happens. And I'd seen clips of it before on YouTube, like I knew about it, but never fully appreciated how incredible it was that happened and was filmed the whole thing was filmed underwater. And wow, chef's kiss. One of the best moments in horror. I'm going to say it here and now. One of the best moments in horror movie making, I think.
Definitely caused by negligence.
Yeah. Thank you to the 1970s for your gross negligence of animal life and not understanding that, but it gave us this.
It sure did. Did that scene stick out to you when you watched it as a kid?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's as you said. I think without like if everyone watches the movie, there's going to be these three iconic scenes, which is this one, the eye gouging, and the zombie coming out the ground and biting the diver in the neck, I think. Mm-hmm. So these are, of course, the three things that kind of stuck with me all the time. And I mean, what was interesting though, this time when I rewatched it as well in the 4K restoration, and sometimes I used to rewatch it all the time, but then I would just kind of skip towards the good parts.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first time I was like, okay, I'm just going to watch it for the story now. And but I was actually surprised how engaged I suddenly was with this. Okay, is this reporter, is he going to get together with the daughter of the girl? And there's like some tension and they're fooling around. So this time I was kind of more engaged emotionally, which I also kind of felt bad for the other couple who they just take them to the island and they both get killed. And I was like, okay, he's like such a cool guy, the blonde one, and yeah, he dies so shortly before the end. So this time I was kind of surprised that I actually quite enjoyed the character dynamics as well, and all the characters are actually not just like red shirts, so they actually have personalities. And as you said, with the diver, the woman, she was also not like a typical damsel in distress. She also with like the short curly hair, and I don't know, she was more of a kind of a badass as well.
Exactly, that's what I loved. I'm like, you know what? You're having her get naked, but she seems like a bad bitch, so I'll allow it.
What I love about that scene though is when she's getting ready and she takes off all of her clothes except for her her loincloth, her thong, like she's just in that, and everyone her boyfriend is just eating nonchalantly. Everyone else is acting as if this is the most normal thing in the world. No one's like paying attention to it. It's just like, yep, all right, because it keeps cutting to them, and he's just sort of like eating his food, and the other ones are just sort of like just chilling, waiting around. I'm like, this woman is literally getting topless, and she is barely clothed, putting on this giant ass scuba tank, putting on the appropriate accoutrements, putting on flippers, putting on, her headpiece so that her hair doesn't get in her eyes, putting on her, she's doing all of this stuff. And yet, although I have to say that the strap of the scuba tank going between her legs is probably incredibly uncomfortable, I would think.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, yeah.
I was like, okay, I don't know if that's the best place for it, but
that was
right.
My favorite editing sequence, when it was just cutting back and forth to them just like nonchalantly watching her and her like spitting in her mask and like doing like scuba divers do that. And I was like, wait, hold on, like she knows her shit.
She's going through it.
And she doesn't die with her tits out. She good for Fulci.
That's true.
The scene.
I still feel bad for her death because it's so like she could have easily escaped, but I think she was just so in awe of this zombie coming. But
I was thinking that too, because I was like, so I agree that I was surprised at how much I was enjoying the characters, because the performances are a little silly. Like, we won't deny that, especially the blonde hair boat driver boyfriend who's like a little goofy, but that's okay. We love them. What, Terry?
Okay, I just had this thought when I was watching this movie this time that like he looks like. And this is revealing some things, but he looks like the typical porn actor in a 1970s American porn. Like, I had to look him up.
I'm just kidding.
When you are a teenager in the 90s and you end up finding some random VHS porn tape, and that becomes like the thing that you watch. And he looks like a lot of the porn actors from that time period, to the point that like I actually had to look him up to make sure that he wasn't, because he just has the hairstyle, the gruffness, he looks like he should be like, this is one scene away from being a porno, like it feels like. And I think that adds to like the sleaziness of this movie. Like in another dimension, this could have been a zombie porno.
Look, zombie pornos exist, right? Like I've never seen one, but they definitely exist, right?
They have to.
Oh yeah, there's like one called Otto Up with Dead People.
Yep.
Bruce.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Which is, it's kind of a zombie porno, I would say.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
I mean, like a zombie pulls her hair while they're making out. It's not sexual, but you could easily make that sexual in another dimension as the zombie's hand comes out and pulls her hair. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's also the eye gouging. I don't know if you guys read that as something. I think it has like a sexual undertone.
Oh, yeah.
It does, yeah, because the hands on her head, pulling her, like it's definitely like suggesting sexual violence, I would say, in a way.
I mean, I guess let's talk about let's talk about it now, I guess, since we're already kind of there. But again, the editing in this movie, the cutting between, like, you're just seeing, like, the tip of the wood, like, and then flashing back to her screaming, and the tip of the wood and the screaming. Like, you know what's going to happen, but it's just, ugh. Because it's Fulci, it's eye trauma, but you're still like, I'm not ready. I'm never ready for eye trauma. I am never ready for eye trauma personally.
And it gets so close to her eye. Like, it
really does.
I am surprised how close that the tip of that wood comes to her actual real eye. Like, her head's being like, I'm curious how they filmed it, because it looks as if he's pulling her, and I'm like, the amount of control and patience you have to have so that you are not causing an accident on set. With that splinter becoming just like literally, it feels like it's literally almost touching her eyeball before they cut away.
Couple sequences in this movie where I was like, they're really, really stretching what safety means for getting these shots. Good Lord. But then also, we mentioned this with the short-haired woman getting killed in the cemetery, and how people don't move, like, there's no resistance, like, in this movie whatsoever when people are getting attacked, like, when she's getting her eye pulled towards. I mean, again, I don't know zombie strength. Perhaps they're much stronger than I perhaps know, but there wasn't a lot of resistance, and I know it's a movie, etc., but still, it was very funny, like, very slowly being pulled towards the splinter, and I'm like, could she have escaped? Like, logistically, could she have escaped that? It wouldn't be fun for the movie, but still.
I wish she could have just put her hand in front of the splinter, probably. I'm not sure if she had a hand free or not, but yeah.
But I also love the idea of these zombies having, like, those intentions of impaling her. Like, the thought of a zombie having, like, enough, like, agency, there's the word, agency to, like, not just, like, bite her, but pull her towards the splinter. And is that really, like, looked at again in the movie? I feel like that is, like, oh, I can remember, like, the only part that looks like it murdered her with that specific intention without. Did that happen again in the movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Couldn't remember.
So,
I was like, wait, is this a smart zombie?
It kind of reminded me. Have you guys seen Burial Ground? Which is kind of a zombie knockoff, you could say. And I think I'm not sure if there's also an eye gouge scene or just something similar. I remember there's one scene where the zombies, they kind of take weapons and they cut off the head, like what do you call it? I'm blanking on the English term. What the Grim Reaper has.
Oh, a scythe?
Oh, the scythe.
A sickle?
Oh, yeah. A sickle, yeah. That the zombies use that to cut off the head. So that's kind of a similar idea, just to kill them, to eat them.
Yeah, I've seen Burial Ground a couple times, and the only thing I honestly remember in that movie is Pietro. Gosh, I cannot pronounce his last name. Barzo.
Peter Bark, you mean?
Yeah, Peter Bark. Yeah. As the kid in that, and the sort of psychosexual relationship between him and his mom. That is a wild movie. That is a wild movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so the zombie with the wormy eye was. That was on the poster. That was your first introduction to this movie. When you finally were able to see it as a kid, did that hold up to you? Did that scene scare you?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah. This is quite freaky because it's quite short, and because you don't see. That's what I like about the film. They stay on the zombies quite long, but it still never feels long enough, because I just want to, especially now, I just want to, keep gazing at them, because I think they look very, beautiful in a sense, just from the makeup and how it's done. It's just like, wow, I just want to keep watching those zombies. And I think it's an appropriate amount of length that you see it, and it comes up, it attacks, it's visceral. It looks even creepier with all the blood at the mouth, and it has these weird teeth, like these really sharp teeth as well, that I found. So no, I thought it was a perfect scene, but he gets killed off quite quickly. But I think there's a few that I think there were a lot of brothers, like actual brothers, who played the zombies, so they kind of looked alike.
Oh, were there? Oh wow, okay.
That's what I read, at least. Yeah. Because there's a lot that kind of look like this one, like bald and with similar makeup.
Yeah, so the makeup was done by Gianetto De Rossi, and they caked it on in several stages, and so the director Lucio Fulci kept constantly referring to the extras as walking flower pots, and it's appropriate because these zombies feel of the earth, I guess, in a way. Like there's one shot, and it's earlier on, and it's a single zombie, and I believe the zombie was shambling through one of the towns, and the camera sort of does this pan around him, and he looks. I think it was a he. I can't remember, but they looked very waxy. As the camera, and it's missing its ear and it's all bloody and stuff, but like it looks as if they have just caked on so much shit that it's fascinating. Like as an adult and watching this now with a fascination for like, you know, makeup special effects, I just kept staring at it. Like you said, Kevin, I just couldn't stop looking at this, how they created the zombie. Cause it's Fulci zombies are unlike any other zombie, I think, from that time period. And that's, I think, what makes them so interesting.
Yeah, it's too bad he didn't do. I mean, he did a few zombie films, but none that were like. I think this is the only one he considers himself to be like a full zombie film. The others are more like supernatural zombies, I guess. But yeah, I love them all. So, what were you about to say?
I'm trying to like think of like history of zombies, because this was like, because obviously we had Night of the Living Dead before this one,
and Dawn
of the Dead. And zombies kind of before that were usually like reanimated bodies through like black magic or
voodoo.
You know, pretty race. Like, and this movie carries this kind of racist connotations about voodoo and things like that. And we see that with some of the other characters as well. But it's like you don't see a lot of zombies like this, even in Night of the Living Dead. You have the zombies. The Zed are rising, et cetera, but they don't look, like you said, Terry, of the earth. You don't really see them coming out and covered in this dirt in bugs. Like, here, they definitely feel earthy and organic, if that makes any sense. Like, they're gross and kind of squishy looking and just decaying, while the zombies you've seen previously either are just, like, they're not looking like they're decaying, and in Night of the Living... I haven't seen Dawn of the Dead, don't tell anybody. But, like, in Night of the Living Dead, they don't look as much like they're decaying. And here, Fulci really plays up the decay of the body, especially because we have, like, not different kinds of zombies, but we have, like, the bodies coming up out of the graveyard, but then you also have the people in the village who are dying and then coming back. So you have these, like, different, like, stages of decay that I don't remember. I haven't seen in the zombie movies I've seen from that era too, which was really interesting, and showing like different kinds of zombies and their different like various stages of being a zombie, which is really cool and gross.
Thinking, I mean, now of course the Walking Dead, they have perfected the makeup art, but one thing that I always find what I'm missing with the Walking Dead is it's more not the makeup but the vocals. Because in Fuji zombies they don't really make any sound, but in general I personally like the moaning, the low moaning more than the. I don't know what it's now. The
rattly
got destroyed.
Yeah,
the rattly thing. I don't like it as much, and also that in the Walking Dead they all seem to have long hair, and I know that the hair appears to grow after you die, but still they are all like long haired and not short haired. But I think they make some. I think there's a few episodes where they make an homage to the maggot zombie from Fulci as well, where you kind of see like they have like one for Creepshow and one for Dawn of the Dead, so they always have like some Easter egg zombies in the show, which I quite like.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, otherwise you don't really see a lot of these rotting zombies.
No, and I think that's what I really appreciated on this rewatch is, well, a couple things. One is that there are different zombies. You have like the more freshly turned, you have the conquistadores that are there, and I like that idea that they're on this island that is kind of in a way a massive graveyard, because eventually throughout history there's going to be bodies buried all over the place, and so they're on a walking graveyard, and the zombies are coming out of the ground in places that maybe you didn't think there would be bodies buried, and they have different levels of decay depending on when they were, how old the corpse is. And I love that. But I also, Kevin, you mentioned it earlier, that one of the things that still I find so incredibly unsettling is that they have their eyes closed. Like I don't believe there's one shot that's incredibly eerie where there's a zombie, they're in the hospital and there's a cut to a window and there's a zombie up there and you can see his eye. And it's like, I think one of the only times that like a zombie is like directly looking at something, and it's a freaky shot. It like actually really affected me this time. I was like, ooh, that's kind of unnerving. But the fact that all these zombies are kind of they don't seem to really care. They just are trudging forward to get their flesh, and so their eyes are closed. It's almost as if they know you're there without having to look. And there's something very, I don't know, unnerving about that. And also the gore. The gore in this movie. Fulci's blood is just on another level of thickness, of color, of everything. And I love seeing his blood.
It's just so thick and paint-like. Mm-hmm. And like whenever you see like a zombie just rip into someone's arm, like again, I will always for my entire life be impressed by being able to show a zombie ripping flesh out of someone's arm. I know it's practical effects, but it's just so fucking cool when you can just like have the camera on the flesh and just watch it be ripped off. It's just neat. And just like seeing that paint blood just like pouring out, especially when the diver woman gets her throat like ripped open by the like the worm zombie, and it's just like I can't make the noise because I don't know, like the blood of like the,
and she's like,
of the blood
and she's
coming
gurgling.
out of yes. Oh, it's so good and it's so gross and it's just paint, but it's beautiful paint just coming out of her jugular from this nasty raggedy teeth that like ripped open her neck. And then there's another, I think it's the doctor when the patient sits up towards the end. They didn't shoot him, but they forgot to shoot him in the head, and he rips flesh off of somebody's arm. It actually might have been, I can't remember whose flesh was being ripped by who, but just these incredible bites and gore and flesh. And like, but then my favorite is when they just have the flesh in the zombie's mouth and the zombie's just walking around with like a hunk of flesh and they just like don't even chew it or anything. It just sits there. It's just, oh, it's so gross, but it's so delightful. My parents are really proud of me.
But did you, for you, Terry, also because you had seen it before and you saw it now, did you think it still holds up as well? Or also for you, Mary Beth, if you saw it for the first time, is it?
You know, I think it's a little slow. I think it's a little slow in spots. But I like I said, I kind of, as much as I appreciate 4K restorations and all of that, cleaning up the gunk, I don't know. I do feel that watching it, because it's the first time I've watched it on the 4K restoration side. I'd always seen it before on like a crappy DVD or like a VHS copy that they didn't spend any time on. I do feel that it kind of loses some of that sleaziness because like this movie, when I just have such memories of first seeing it and just being kind of like grossed out about it in the same way that I was grossed out watching like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on a crappy VHS, where it's like it's so dingy and so poor quality that it almost feels like you're watching something you're not supposed to. Whereas here it's like everything is honed to a sheen. And so like I think that aspect of it, plus I do think it is a little slow in spots up into like towards the beginning. It's kind of a little convoluted how they finally get to the island is a little slow, and then there's a lot of like dead space I think in the middle of the movie. But once it gets going, I still think this movie is stellar.
I was incredibly impressed. I mean, I definitely think it's slow, but I also think a lot of those like 1978 Italian movies are slow. Like, and I kind of know the beats to expect in my brain because we watched a lot of Giallo recently. So I know this is not Giallo, but kind of like that pacing. But
Italian
I was
cinema.
so impressed with how gory and how the effect that to me I think stuck out more than anything. Like in the slow parts, I was like, well, I'm just gonna float back and think about the naked woman, like the naked scuba diving zombie shark scene. Like it's just there's so many impressive set pieces that like I can't fathom being made today due to like legal and logistical concerns. But like two, I mean, like there's just no one doing it or have done it like Fulci, and it's just, you know, incredible to see that proved with every movie I see of his, because I'm obviously a huge horror person, but I'm not as well versed in like Fulci stuff and in like Italian horror, so just learning more about that and seeing just how influential his works have been and seeing really how he did shape so much of the horror genre is absolutely incredible, and it makes me so happy to see it hold up so well and have it still be this like pinnacle of incredible filmmaking. It's just, it warms your heart to be like, like horror is an incredible genre, and these things still hold up and they need to be appreciated. Mary Beth McAndrews, who is slowly learning her lesson, but it just like an incredible experience. I was texting Terry last night. I was watching it like 1 a.m. and I was like, this movie fucks. Like, this movie is just so good. It is so cool. It is incredible. That's my answer.
Does it hold up for you?
Yeah, that's also big. I was actually surprised that it held up a lot better than I expected it to. And it was a bit slow, but I had it slower in my memory. I thought it was a lot slower, but I think it works quite well. I mean, you have the opening scene, which is pretty good as well, with the zombie in the boat. And then it's, of course, a bit of dry run where you have like the story, but then you get the shark scene and then the island. So it kind of has a good flow. I was just surprised how well-rounded the whole thing felt this time when I watched it. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Yeah.
A lot of times, I do think that some of because I've kind of gone down a lot of different rabbit holes on Italian horror cinema from this time period, and this one actually has a story that I think has a beginning, middle, and an end, and has a more concrete story to it that is easier to like follow, and it's not just sort of like dream logic or just sort of really cool sequence after really cool sequence. This one actually feels like they spent amount of time trying to make a story that makes sense in a way, and so I appreciate that. I also, one thing that I find is very funny, because this movie is called Zombie, but it's also called Zombie 2.
It's got like 6 different names, doesn't it?
And so what happened was, Dawn of the Dead, which I know you haven't seen, Mary Beth, Dario Argento recut it and gave it a score by Goblin, and they released it in Italy as Zombie. And I have this copy that I haven't watched yet that has the Dario Argento cut of the film. That I really want to watch, that has with Goblin and everything. But so they released it as Zombie, and because Italian copyright law is so lax, they could make this movie and call it Zombie 2 as a sequel. I'm using that in quotations, listeners, as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. And I think that is, it just makes me so happy that there are these movies out there that are Italian sequels, because they did this a lot. There's Terminator 2, which is the name for Shocking Dark. There's La Casa 3, which is Evil Dead in Italy was called La Casa. And so they made La Casa 3, which had nothing to do with Sam Raimi's movie. There's a movie called Night Killer that they call Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. They made a shark movie and they called it Cruel Jaws, or they called it Jaws 5. Like, there's all of these, and that came out, I think, in 1991. So there's all of these movies that are just sort of like, they cash in on the American-made films as like this is a sequel to it, and they could get away with it because of copyright laws. And I think it's hilarious, and I love it.
It's incredible. I love it.
And I think when this was written or shot, Dawn of the Dead hadn't even come out yet, or at least when it was written. And then I think the New York scene, they kind of intentionally shot just to connect it to the American theme.
Oh.
Yeah, I think they retrofitted the script to be somehow tied to that movie.
Well, I liked the ending. I thought the ending was, I mean, again, but I love a good nihilistic zombie movie. Like, oh, you thought that you survived this isolated incident.
The one scene that got deleted that I'm really sad about, where you just see the zombies rising out of the water in New York.
I heard about that.
That they apparently shot, but yeah, I would have loved to see that.
I would have too.
But it's, yeah.
I do think that Zack Snyder kind of made an homage to this movie with the end of his remake of Dawn of the Dead, because in that movie they get on the boat, they're set to sail, and it's like, okay, they finally escaped, and they're going to an island as opposed to going to the mainland. And then we have here, them escaping the island and trying to go back to the mainland, and then finding out, nope, you're fucked. There's nowhere to go. You're just stuck on this boat because the United States is now fucked as well. So it's like, I watching this now after, because we had recently rewatched Dawn of the Dead for our little cut series, like, I don't know, 6 months ago or whatever, and it was the first time I'd watched it in a long time, and then watching that and then watching this, like, oh, okay, so this is definitely an homage there.
We can also briefly talk about the theme, the zombie musical, the theme, the song, kind of. That's, of course, the iconic Da, 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 da. This theme. And I always have to think about it because when I'm home at my mom's place, she has a coffee machine, and when I start it, it gives the exact same dum dum dum
Oh,
dum, the
man.
exact same tempo. Every time it happens, I just kind of sing the theme to myself, and my mom's like, "What's wrong with you?"
That is incredible.
I was listening to that theme, and like I was watching this with my roommate, and she had never seen this movie before, and she's like on the side just bobbing her head to some of the music. And I was listening to this at one point, and I was like, you know what? Someone today could take this song and sample it and make a pretty cool like trip hop pop song here in the 2000s, because it has like that energy that I feel like someone could just sample it perfectly and make like a really cool pop song, because it's one step away from being a pop song in some cases. I love that. Do, do, do. Yeah.
It's just so good. Like that entire score, again, like it's just, like you said, it feels like contemporary. It doesn't feel like a 70s score.
Fabio Frizzi, man. I love his work. He did Beyond, Pieces, a lot of Italian films. His music was used in Kill Bill because Quentin Tarantino loves him some Italian cinema. Yeah, I think he's a really good composer. I think most people, when they think of Italian horror cinema, they're thinking of Goblin a lot of times, right? But yeah, I do think Fabio is a great composer.
Fabio Frizzi, what an incredible name. Fabio Frizzi. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we give us a rating out of 5?
I just was the one thing that really stuck out to me this time is I don't know if they use squibs or if they were shooting people with like paint guns, but every time a zombie gets hit, I felt that. Like, I don't know how they filmed it, but there's like some scenes where they get hit in the stomach in particular, and they just sort of like jolt back and then start walking forward again. But it has like a punchiness to it that I'm like, I'm really curious how they filmed it, because it feels very real that these people are getting hit by something.
I mean, wouldn't be surprised if they had like paintball gun, or some kind of paint gun where they were like, "Look, y'all, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna have a bruise, but you'll be fine."
There's one shot in particular where one gets shot in the head, and it looks like they got pinged by a paintball, and he just sort of stops. And it's like, I feel like he's registering the pain, going, "Ow, don't break character." Like, that is what it seems like.
Well, like, especially when they shot the corpses too. I was like, damn, they really look like they shot something. Like when the paint explodes and all that stuff. I'm like, Fulci was not fucking around here with like the effects, and it's like, nah, like it's fine, guys, it's fine. It's 1979. We'll be fine.
Here you have your $20 for your part.
And now we're going to shoot paintballs at you. Excuse me, what? All right, and shoot.
Oh my god. Incredible.
Okay, so Kevin, I have to ask, watching this now as an adult, does it still hold the same weight as it did as a kid? Did it bring you back to that childhood memory of being terrified watching it for the first time?
Definitely. I mean, I wasn't terrified watching it now, but I can still see myself being I can still see why I was terrified watching it. And there was also some shots, like especially the one that you mentioned with the zombie with the eyes open, that I still found really creepy watching now, because it's from this low angle. It kind of has like this Evil Dead. He's looking up the basement thing. Yeah, I still think it's a very unsettling film. So
I was watching this and I was like, a child watched this. Good God. I'm very excited to hear about that, because good Lord.
Well, you know what? I was thinking that, like, I think in some ways some of these Italian horror movies are best watched as a kid, because they do I mean, this one a little less than, like, say, The Beyond, or, you know, some of Fulci's other, what is it? City of the Living Dead, I think, was another one, where they have like a dreamlike logic to it, where it feels, I don't know, it feels so otherworldly in a way that I do think that there's a good way that the imagery that's on stage could easily get into a child's head and be like, oh yeah, that's terrifying.
All right, Terry.
Yes.
Shall we wrap this up and give us our rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
Terry, how many eye traumas out of 5 do you give Fulci Zombie?
You know, I I looked at my letterbox when I added this, and I had given it a 4, and then I had thought about dropping it to a 4.5, but no, I'm gonna stick at 4. This is 4 eye traumas. It's gnarly, it's gory, it has some fantastic effects, it has some iconic shots that I feel are so ingrained in a horror fan, whether you've seen it or not, because I know, Mary Beth, you had not seen this movie, and yet the shark scene, I'm sure you've heard about, the eye impaling, I'm sure you've heard about. It's one of these are moments that I think kind of continue through, regardless of whether you've seen the movie or not, through or horror fans like history. It just, I love the things that are in this film. Yes, it's a little slow in spots. You know what? It's a lot of fun, and it's gory and goopy. So I'm gonna stick with 4 eye traumas out of 5. How about you, Mary Beth?
I'm also gonna give this 4 eye traumas out of 5. Like Terry said, my first time watch. Absolutely incredible film. You know, has its bumps, but cannot deny how incredibly impactful this has been on the horror genre and how it still stands up today. Paint and all. It is disgusting. It is incredible to watch. Fulci is a master, and it's damn good. So that's all I got. And then Kevin, you have the final word. How many eye traumas out of 5 do you give Zombie?
I was also kind of debating between 4 or 4.5, but I think, I'll give it a 4.5 just because...
Hell yeah.
I don't know, I can't really think of how it could have been done. I mean, how it could have been done better. I mean, there's, of course, some, like the actors, it's shot in different languages and stuff like that. But from a technical standpoint, I think it's really solid and... and it's like an iconic horror classic. So, and I'm just happy because Fulci itself, he had a quite tragic life, and he was really depressed a lot. And so I think shortly before he died was the first time he kind of realized that he had a big impact on the horror world internationally. But in general, I think he was a very sad person, unfortunately. Yeah. So I'm just happy that his legacy lives on.
Yeah.
So, 4.5.
Yeah. I'm curious, have you seen any of the other sequels, Zombie 3 or 4?
I'm kind of confused, actually, because I'm also confused because there's like Zombie Flesh Eaters, and I'm never sure if this is the one that he did with Bruno Mattei, or if this is an alternate title for Zombie.
I think this one is Zombie Flesh Eaters. On Letterboxd, this one is Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Okay. I think it's Zombie 4 is the one he co-directed. I'm not sure if Nightmare City, is this also part of the zombie? That's why I kind of always get confused.
It is really hard to keep them straight. I think I have Zombie 3 pulled up right now, and it was Lucio Fulci, and I think he was ill during the filming and he had to bow out, and so they also had Bruno Mattei.
This one I had seen.
Okay,
then, yeah.
I think it has zombie birds in it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so that's Zombie 3. I've not seen it. I own it on Blu-ray because, of course, I do. But I have not seen it or Zombie 4 yet. But after I finished watching this last night, I was like, oh, if it wasn't so late, I would just sit down and watch the next two. Are they entertaining? Is that one at least entertaining?
It's okay. It's not as good though. You can kind of see the moments that Fulci directed and the ones Mattei did, and this has some solid moments, but in terms of films that are similar, like Burial Ground, as I mentioned, this is also like a favorite of mine, and also like some newer movies. They're called the Dead. You might have seen them. There's like 2 movies of them, like The Dead 1 and The Dead 2. The Dead 2 is in India, and the first one is in Africa. I think they're from 2010, around 2010. Oh. And this is like the few modern horror films that kind of feel very much like the original Fulci Zombie. I haven't seen the second one, though. I just saw the first one, which I actually quite liked, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, Kevin, to talk about Zombie, because I'm always happy to talk about this movie. I was really excited when you chose this one. But where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you can share or plug?
They can find me on... is there going to be a text, or should I just say like on Twitter? And in Twitter, it's like Kevin Kopacka, just one word. And Instagram, it's For Those Who Still Exist. And on Letterboxd, it's kind of the same. It's this FTWSE, which stands for Those Who Still Exist, which is kind of my moniker. So yeah, if you feel free to add me and stay up to date. And yeah, and Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes is, as you mentioned, it's having its VOD and theatrical release, actually. Ooh. Like a limited theatrical release in the States on the 24th. So yeah, be sure to check it out. And yeah, I'm currently plotting the next movie. Or I'm in the pitching mode actually for the next film, and so I'm quite happy to kind of give an end to Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes after 4 years and to kind of start the next project.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
because it was a long process. So, but thank you so much for having me as well. It was a blast, and as I said, I listened to a lot of your episodes, and it was just really fun listening to you guys. So it's like, oh, I can't wait to be a guest on the show.
We're so glad that you were here, because obviously we were huge fans of the film. So everybody, please check it out, June 24th. It is gonna blow your mind. But listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with Zombie, Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters, however you call it? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system. If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served. Hi, I'm Detective Dave. I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood. So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished. From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.